All right, folks, can I have your attention for a moment? First of all, welcome to Collegiate. Just FYI, you notice there's no sound coming out of the microphone, but this is for the streaming. That's the only way that they can hear us. So we are streaming live to those out there. And so welcome to those who are watching our first town hall meeting for the First Chesapeake region for this year. Introduce myself. My name is Greg Cresge. I'm an assistant mentor here at Torch 5804, based out of the Collegiate School. Welcome to Collegiate. We're excited to have you all here on campus today. For this town hall meeting today, we have 4 members of the First Chesapeake staff. Sitting directly to my left, Leanne Scott Bolin. She's our executive director for the region, or for the district, excuse me. Jim Kresge. Jim Kresge is the CTO at West Creek Financial and the chairman of the board for First Chesapeake. Kristen Clemens, our director of programs, is here, as well as Sarah Gagnon, our assistant director of volunteers and community engagement. So they're joining us here. A couple housekeeping items. Outside this door, we'll keep this door shut so that there's no noise coming in. But outside this door, we have water, some cookies. The bathrooms are also located out here. To just behind me is the women's bathroom, and on the far side of the lobby is the men's bathroom. To get us started, we just kind of want to get a feel for who's here. If you want to go ahead, just pass the mic around, introduce yourself, what team you're from. That would be fantastic, so we all know who's represented today.
Bruce Davies. I'm with an FTC team 13569.
Darcy Davies, team 7249.
Stephanie Deloach, FRC 2106.
Christine Kyoto, team 5804.
Mark Seiler, team 422.
Aaron Hammonds, team 346. Andrew Yanoshak, 346.
Kuvank, team 2998, Thomas Jefferson High School.
Connor Clark, team 384, and FTC team 8630.
Jasper Carson, team 384.
Hi, Paul Elkovich, formerly with 346, currently a volunteer.
Bob Benway, formerly with 384, formerly with 975, formerly with 346, but now a happy member of FTC 13804.
Marcellus Beasley, 13804.
Mike Walton, always a volunteer.
Cassie Robison, 6882.
Maren Coben, 6882.
Patrick Foley, volunteer.
Alina Chihotsky, 3804.
Vicky Hurt, 3804.
Mandy Brown, 7278.
Melanie Darty, 7278, the library bots from Chesterfield County.
David Keegan, volunteer.
Michael Davidson, 1086.
Matt Wilson, 1086.
Mike Ribikov, 3136.
Tom Larson, FRC 1599, and FTC 15304. There we go.
Let's hear it for Fredericksburg, right?
All right, so the format that the First Chesapeake staff came up with for tonight's presentation, it's going to be 2 parts. There is going to be, for the town hall, there is a presentation part that Leanne will present to us. We have PowerPoints, probably 20 minutes or so-ish, yeah, somewhere in that regards, to cover the main things that have been brought up recently with the First Chesapeake staff and questions that have been presented. And then from there is a set of pre-selected questions that the staff has seen. We'll then answer individually. And then finally, the last part, we will open it up to questions that you all may have from that standpoint that hopefully we can get some clarification and some more information on. So with that, I'll turn over to Leanne for the presentation.
Thank you. So this is interesting. For those of you who know me well, you know that I was a liberal arts major, so I'm not technically inclined, so hopefully I will be able to navigate through all this. And if not, I've got Gabe back here, who's our production manager. Yay, Gabe, and he will help me. So please bear with me. I did want to also say thank you so much to Collegiate School for hosting this event. We really appreciate this. So I just kind of wanted to start off and say, because of our geography, it's hard to have these face-to-face meetings as much as we should. And so I am so grateful for those of you that are here today. And if we have the live stream up at some point, for those who are watching on the live stream, I really appreciate this opportunity to have this open and honest discussion about something that's important to all of us. It's the reason that we're here. We want FIRST Chesapeake to be a strong organization that is positively impacting the thousands of young people in Virginia, D.C., and Maryland, right? So that's why we're here. And I don't want to take up too much time talking about myself, but let me give you a little background for some of you who don't know me that well. I've been with FIRST as Virginia First or FIRST Chesapeake for over 10 years now. I started off as I kind of started off as an administrative assistant. I think that was my title. But I was then operations and communications manager. I was development director. And for the past a little over 2 years, I've also been the executive director. But you may not know that my oldest son is also a product of FIRST. He participated in FIRST Tech Challenge, and as I'm sure Vicki Hurt can tell you, he probably participated more for the free pizza than for the technical challenges. But because of FIRST, he was able to land 2 incredible internships. And now he is working for Accenture in Arlington, Virginia. So we all have many reasons for wanting to be a part of FIRST Chesapeake. Mine includes wanting to share that experience with other families, since we had such a positive experience with FIRST. And also, I am so thankful that because of FIRST, my son is happy, he's employed, and he is no longer asking me to pay his rent. So it's all good. Are we working now? Awesome. Okay. So this PowerPoint, as we said, is just going to give you some background and answer some of the common questions that folks have been asking. And thank you all for filling out your survey forms. As a disclaimer, I need to say that some of the numbers you're going to see have not been audited yet. We've gotten as close as we can. But when you see our annual report later this fall, we may be off by a little bit, but we're pretty darn close, okay? So, Gabe, okay, so I just push the little arrow to go to the next one, correct? Thank you. So, more than just robots. Really? You swear? Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. So I want to talk about the values, philosophy, and mission of FIRST Chesapeake. Click it or push it? No, I can do it. Here we go. Okay, so the FIRST Chesapeake values, they're pretty much based on FIRST core values: gracious professionalism, cooperation. I know you can read for yourself, so I won't go through all of them. But one that I really want to focus on tonight is teamwork, and that's we are stronger when we work together. And now I'm going to get a little daring and go past that one and go to the FIRST Chesapeake mission. Obviously, FIRST Chesapeake supports the mission of FIRST. Again, you can read this, and I'm sure you all know it by heart, but I did just want to bring it up so you can kind of be reminded. And I'm afraid that's my phone that's ringing. I'm sorry. And then I want to bring you back to our FIRST Chesapeake philosophy. Before we get too far into the details of FIRST Chesapeake, I want to address the question that's been asked the most in all these survey forms, and that's how can we work together? And the answer that I'm going to give you is probably going to seem too broad or too simple, but I feel that if we don't address this first, that any ideas that follow are just going to be dead in the water. And the way that we can work together is to assume positive intent. And this is something that was shared with us at the first partners meeting when we were up in New Hampshire in January, or in June. And it just gives you an idea of what we mean by positive intent, that we're all in this together, that we all want the best for the organization, we all want the best for the kids. So when we are trying to work together, we need to remember that there is a positive intent there. And then I'd like to go a little bit further and say not only do we need to assume positive intent, we also need to work together to avoid this culture of contempt that we are seeing in society today. And by contempt, I mean that assumption that there's only one viewpoint, that the other person is an idiot, or that they have some sort of nefarious purpose behind what they're doing. And you can look this up on YouTube. I mean, there are actually videos and videos about this culture of contempt. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying we can't disagree. I actually want us to disagree, because that's how we get better, right? That's how we hear other people's viewpoints. That's how we solve problems. But what I want us to do is I want us to be able to create a dialogue and communicate in a respectful, productive way. I hate to keep using the word contempt, but I'm going to use it one more time. Just think about it. When was the last time that you really wanted to continue working with someone who treated you with contempt? I'm just going to leave you with that one. I would like to give you an example of how a disagreement in communication between myself and some of the volunteers really changed my way of thinking this year. It had never occurred to me that the volunteers and the teams felt like they didn't have a voice. I mean, I attended events, I talked to teams, you know, I sat at the volunteer table sometimes, and I put my phone number and my email after every communication. I figured, heck, you know, people, they've got my information, they know they can talk to me. But after the 2019 championship, several volunteers reached out to me and told me how they felt. They said they felt that they were not involved in decisions. Like, they didn't understand why we chose a certain venue. They didn't understand why we did things a certain way. And I'll tell you what I really appreciated from these folks. When they reached out to me, they reached out to me the old-fashioned way. They picked up the phone and called me. And honestly, I was floored. I had no idea that there was this perception out there that I was making all of these decisions, you know, in my ivory tower and not including people I thought I had been. So these folks, not only did they come to me and tell me how they were feeling, they also offered these solutions. And one of the solutions was to form the team advisory committee. And I hope I'm not embarrassing anyone who's here who is on the committee, but I was hoping that they might stand up so they can be recognized. And you're not going to stand up? But I do want you to take a good look at this gentleman here who has raised his hand, will not stand. All of the advisory committee members' contact information is on our website under About Us. And these people are really dedicated to making FIRST Chesapeake a better organization and working with us. They are your representatives. So they meet once a month, at least once a month, and they bring concerns and ideas to FIRST Chesapeake staff and to the board. They've already provided feedback on ways to improve team communications, on venue selection for next year, and we are working together on creating some very team-specific pages on the website to help give you more information about the events and some resources. So please give this gentleman a round of applause for what he is doing and what all of the committee members are doing. And I also wanted to make clear that First Chesapeake staff is always available to answer questions or discuss ideas. Again, our contact information is also on the website. If you look at About Us, you'll see all of it there. It's got our emails and our cell phone numbers. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that was all there. So as we move forward, let's please remember to assume positive intent and remember that we're all here because of First Chesapeake. And now I'm going to try and use the PowerPoint again. Maybe. It's not a touchscreen. Well, that helps. Okay. So our impact. Here you can see our impact for First Chesapeake for the past year. We've gone up with team numbers. We've gone up for a number of events, live feed views. Thank you. Sorry, I can see it. Live feed views and volunteers. Our volunteer pool is growing, and most of it really is the result of the hard work of Sarah Gagnon here. For those of you who have worked with Sarah, I'm sure you love her as much as we do, but she really gives 110% to this organization. I just wanted to put up a couple of quotes here so you can see the real impact of what we're doing. Franklin Military Academy, it's one of our Richmond City schools. They have just been phenomenal with what they've been able to do. Gulu Gambier is one of our board members. He is also one of our volunteers. You'll see him judging at some of the events. And Katie Kasiba, she received one of our first ever Women in STEM Scholarship Awards this past year. And I love what she says. First is like your favorite thing that your mom makes, but she slips vegetables in it. You love it, but it's good for you too. I just love that. And then we have a celebrity here. I'm going to point him out. Dave Keegan over here. He's an alumni. He's also gone a long ways to help us with some of our local sponsorships. He's a volunteer. He is just awesome. So I just wanted to show you what he had to say as well. And as far as our programs go, I'm sure most of you already know this, but I just want to go through it very quickly. We work with, there are 4 district partners in the Virginia, D.C., Maryland area. We do FRC in Virginia, D.C., and Maryland. We do FTC in Virginia. But we also work with USRA STEM Action. We also work with VADC FLL. And we also work with UMBC. All 4 partners currently serve over 1,800 teams. Here's just a few facts about FIRST Robotics Competition. We are one of the largest in the districts, so just thought you might like to know that. And then FIRST Tech Challenge, just a few more details on that. And on to volunteers. Again, I mentioned Sarah once before. She is going to talk about volunteers in more detail, but I just wanted you to see a rundown of where we are. We have over 3,400 volunteers right now between mentors and event volunteers. And you see the hours that they put in, which thank you all volunteers. We couldn't do it without you. And then the financials. So we brought in a little over $1 million, right? We spent almost $1 million. One thing that folks may not realize is that with the way our relationship is with FIRST headquarters, the registration fee for FRC goes up to headquarters, and then we receive about 20% in the beginning, about 20% back of that. We get about $130,000 a year from FIRST headquarters. That's all we get from FIRST headquarters. The rest of that we have to raise through sponsorships and donations. Yeah. So your money that goes for your district championship goes to headquarters. We don't receive it, except there's one exception, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. For the total expenses, I did want to point out that almost all of our money does go to servicing the teams, team growth, the events. One thing that I didn't break out here, unless it's in this text that I'm not seeing, there we go. About 88,000 of our sponsorships, grants, and donations do go back to the teams. That's the pass-through that a lot of you receive. And before I can talk about the future of First Chesapeake, I need to kind of tell you what's going on with First Headquarters. First Headquarters has had this ecosystem study project that they've been working on for over a year now, and we are going to be impacted by that. I wish I could tell you exactly how I knew we were going to be impacted by that. We just know that it's going to happen, and so we're hoping to have a little bit more clarity by the end of December. But let me just kind of tell you what they mean by ecosystem. The ecosystem project is meant to really just give clarity. It's to improve the program delivery, communication, and also they talk about the revenue streams. We're working with First Headquarters to try and change that that percentage that we get back every year, to give us a little breathing room so we can do some of the things we want to, and also to better support the teams and the competitions. With this first ecosystem, they want to address these challenges that they have seen at First. And so these are the four main challenges that they've identified. Pretty much, First has realized that we've got over 200 program partners with First. And they just can't, and we all have different agreements, so they just can't manage it anymore. Communication is not the way it should be. And also our story is just really hard to tell. I mean, can you imagine what it's like when I go in and talk to somebody in DC and say, okay, if you want to do FRC in DC, you talk to me. But if you want to do FTC in DC, you have to talk to USRA STEM Action. But if you want to do FLL, you have to talk to VADC FLL. So we're trying to make that, they are trying to make it clear. We are working with them to try and make it clear. And so this just gives you an idea of what they're talking about doing with this organizational structure. Again, we're talking about clarity, communication, brand identity, making our story easier to tell. And First has identified these objectives for us. So you can read that. And then there are three structure types that they've proposed, three leadership structure types. One is the single organization. That's where one organization manages all four programs, from FLL Junior all the way through to FRC. So that's like Pacific Northwest would have that. Two is the peer leader program delivery partner. That means, like where we are, things are probably just going to pretty much stay the same, but one partner is going to be identified as the lead partner who is going to handle most of the fundraising and facilitate communication between the public, sponsors, and First with the other partners. And then there's a third type where a First employee is actually going to manage all programs, but that's in some of the smaller areas. Jim, I hope I'm okay in going out on a limb here and saying we believe, from what we've heard from First Headquarters, that number two, the peer leader program delivery partner, is what this ecosystem is going to mean to us. We have not, no one has been told who that leader is going to be, which partner, but they did say that they are hoping to identify that partner by December. So with that said, I can tell you First Chesapeake's vision for the future, and Jim is going to talk about this some more in a minute. But just kind of in a nutshell, in July of last year, the First Chesapeake Board of Directors identified the following vision for the future, and that's that we want to have First programs represented in all 168 school districts in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And you can see the numbers here. Right now, about 7% of the school districts have First, K through 12. 65% have some presence of FIRST. So we're doing pretty well, but we still have our work cut out for us. And I'm sure Jim can tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. So now I want to get to where we're talking about some of the questions that have come up. Sponsors. If you ever attend a fundraising workshop, one of the first slides that always pops up is no money, no mission. It's just the way it is. If we don't have people who can pay the bills, we can't operate. And that's one of the things that our sponsors do. Sponsorships provide funds that defray costs, operational costs, team costs. They provide in-kind services sometimes. Max Potential, if you've seen their logo or heard of them, they are one of our in-kind sponsors. They host our website. They do all of our web design for us at pro bono. Sponsorships introduce teams to future employers. I'm sure some of you have either kids or you are working for someone who is or was a sponsor. And sponsorships also provide volunteers, both for mentors and events. And what sponsorships don't do, and it's funny because I hear these conversations, and I'm like, that's not what they do. So if you have a $5,000 sponsorship for a VIP suite, some people think that means we spend $5,000 on the food for the VIP suite. And that's not how it works. We probably spend $500 maybe on the VIP suite. And then the rest of it goes to defray the costs of the competition, team support. So that is how we pay our bills. Another thing I hear is when we have the skyboxes specifically at Championship, we have the skyboxes sometimes, and they say, well, the sponsors like to look down on the teams and the volunteers. And I guess, okay, maybe in a sense they are looking down, but that's not the purpose of it. It's because most of these people have never been to a competition before. And so by having them up there, we can talk to them, we can explain what's going on, we can make sure that we have student ambassadors who can kind of corral these folks, take them around, explain the game. And in the end, we hope that they are so impressed by what they see that they will continue to sponsor, they will tell their friends, they will come back and volunteer. Another thing we hear is that they replace longtime volunteers at events, and that is never our intention. One question that has come up quite a bit is, what are we going to do about our volunteer pool? How do we continue to build our volunteer pool? And this is one way that we do it. Sponsors want their employees to be engaged. They want them to feel like they're a part of the event. And this is a way to do it. We bring these folks in. They have a great experience. They come back. They volunteer season after season, we hope. And Newport News Shipbuilding is a great example of that. They have had engaged volunteers for so long now that their volunteers are now moving into key volunteer positions where we need them. So we've got them in the pipeline there. And so this is what sponsors want. They want recognition as a good corporate citizen, a chance for their employees to feel like they're a part of an event or team. I mean, we all want to feel like we're a part of something, right? And they want an opportunity to educate FIRST team members about potential internships and future careers. And also, I mean, you think about it, why do you give? It feels good to give. And so that's one of the reasons that they do it. So let's talk about competitions. There were lots of people who wanted to know what goes into selecting a venue. And these are several things that we look at. We look at how we would be able to work with the people. Have they expressed an interest even in being a part of one of these competitions? And it also comes down to finances. Are there affordable hotels nearby for the teams? Are there affordable food options? And also volunteer pool is always very important. So you can see that there. And this is just a list of our competitions that are coming up. I guess I could have skipped past that slide because you can see that on the website. But then talking about the District Championship 2020, it was kind of funny when, well, maybe it wasn't funny. It was kind of funny to me when we announced a championship, and the 2020 championship is going to be at the Hampton Roads Coliseum, and everybody just kind of went, huh? But there is a reason behind it. One of the reasons is Newport News Shipbuilding is an incredible sponsor. They give so much back to the community, and you can see here how much they have given back to the teams. They give a tremendous amount of money back to the teams. Not only do they give back to the teams, they have also supported other STEM-based nonprofits in the area as a result of their sponsorship with us. They have started giving money to these folks as well. So they are just an incredible sponsor, and they are very dedicated to us. They have a strong volunteer pool. They provide over a third of all volunteers for our district event there in Hampton, or in Portsmouth, excuse me. And the Hampton Coliseum had pretty much everything we were looking for. I admit it's not beautiful, but it's right off the interstate. It has a lot of free parking. It has lots and lots of space inside. Some really nice hotels that are fairly affordable that are right across the street. They're within walking distance. There are restaurants that are right down the road, 70 restaurants within less than a half a mile of the Coliseum. And the rental fee for the Coliseum is about 30% less than the University of Maryland. Not to put down the University of Maryland, but this really was a great deal that we couldn't pass up. The city of Hampton was on board. They were so excited about having this competition there. I don't know if any of you have been down Mercury Boulevard where the Coliseum is, but they have this huge electronic billboard, and they're going to start advertising the competition 2 to 3 months out. So our name is going to be on there flashing up saying, in April, this is coming. So this is going to be incredible. They're going to help us with their social media. There are going to be media alerts that go out. And then we also have some help with some room and board. So the final thing is, I said that we don't ever get money back for the district championship registration. This is hard to explain, but I'm going to try. FIRST headquarters has an incentive for us to grow. And one of the incentives is if we have over 64 teams registered, then we get to keep the registration fees for team number registered as 65 through 80, okay? So that means that we get an additional $64,000 this year if we have 80 teams at the Hampton Coliseum. That $64,000 is going to go back into our budget. And that means that that's $64,000 that we can then put towards needs-based team grants, team growth, and team support for the 2021 season. So, some people said that it was a purely mercenary move, but we see that it's supporting our mission. So again, we're talking about how can we work together. I just want to give you this information. Again, it's on the website. These are our brave members of the advisory committee. They are your representatives. They are willing to talk to you. Please let them know your thoughts. And then here's our staff. Again, all of our information is here. All of our information is on the website. Please reach out to us. I will say that we are not responding to conversations posts on closed social media, because that's what it is. It's closed. If you have a question, if you want us to bring something up, we will bring it up in a way that everyone can hear the answer, or if it's something that you want to keep private, we'll keep it between us. And then here is our board, including our fearless chair, Jim Kresge. So that's it for me. Did you want me to turn it over to you for a sec?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, first of all, thanks for the presentation.
Did I just cover my? I think I did.
We asked that we just hold questions about her presentation, and then we have some questions here that we're going to go through I think there's 5 questions that we're going to get through. Let's get through those 5 questions, and then we can follow up on any of those questions at that point. So to begin some of the pre-screen questions that we have received. Jim, I think this one is kind of directed more towards you. What is First Chesapeake Board's vision, obviously, as the board member here? What's the board's vision for the future, both near and long term?
Sure. I'll give you the short answer because I think it'll be better when we get into the dialogue. But a couple of things. First, this is not the answer. I just want to say thanks. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from everybody today. Just understand what your questions are and what your thoughts are. It's a great opportunity to sort of bring this back to the board and help us get better from your thoughts. So I'm very thankful about that. The other is I just thought I'd tell you just the smallest bit about myself, about why this whole thing is important to me. My story is probably shares some things in common with all of you and why you're here. My mom and dad grew up in the coal regions of eastern Pennsylvania. Their whole families worked in the mines. At that time, there wasn't a lot of automation. It was pretty backbreaking work, and coming home covered in soot and black lung and all this stuff. And my dad went to Penn State on the GI Bill and studied engineering. Got a mechanical engineering degree. And my mom, they didn't know each other until they went to college. My mom was lucky enough to go and studied chemistry. My parents got jobs at IBM in upstate New York in the 60s. Back then, IBM in the 60s, it was like Google and Apple combined. It was like the great company. But it changed the whole complexion of our family for generations to come. It literally, math and science and STEM and engineering literally lifted our entire extended family up from really challenging life to the American dream. And so I'm so super committed to making STEM education something that's available to everybody, and that's just what brings me here. And it sort of dovetails into what the board has been talking about for FIRST and FIRST Chesapeake. You probably heard this before, but it's to really want STEM education and robotics for FIRST in particular to be as ubiquitous as youth soccer. That's one of those North Star moonshot ideas. It may never come to be, but grasping for that and moving in that direction where every child that has an opportunity to be exposed to this in the district. And the specific words we put on it, I think Leanne had the slide up before, which is we'd really like to have a FIRST program in every school in the district, and we're far away from that, but that's where we would like to head, and just push hard on that as a vision of a place to get. There's a couple of objectives that the board is focused on right now near term, and there's some objectives that are longer term objectives to help us get there. So those objectives are, the first is we need to have the right financial capability to grow. Every time you grow teams, you grow programs, you grow events, there's associated costs and expense that just comes along with that. So as Leanne mentioned, we're working very hard with FIRST headquarters in this ecosystem project to sort of make sure that the right financial model of how fees are shared across headquarters and district groups is set up, so that there's just there's a sustainable sort of financial construct in place that is beneficial and lets districts grow. We're also working on our own fundraising capabilities. We have a fundraising committee that has 4 or 5 members from the board on it that's really focused on how we make a really compelling case to large organizations and small about what sponsorship means and how that's good for them. The third big thing that we're working on is building relationships with boards of education at the national, state, and local level. That's huge. Whenever we can get FIRST Robotics on equal footing with the football team, in terms of how the school views it, great things happen. And there's models out there where that's the case. Actually, I think Michigan is in that sort of model where they get a lot of backing from the state and boards of education. And we're making some inroads there. We have some school districts where we have teams in every single school, and we're working on developing those relationships. We're working in partnership with FIRST headquarters. I said I was going to make this short, and now I didn't do that. Sorry about that. working closely with FIRST headquarters because they have relationships with government and boards of education at national and state levels to really grow our engagement there. And ideally, we would like robotics, to be a school-sponsored activity where there's both funding from the state and ongoing support for volunteers within the schools. That's really seen. I think our board sees that as probably the biggest, largest growth avenue for the programs. Now, longer term, there's others, like once we get that basic bone structure in place, there's other things that we need to do. We need to figure out just how to build the capacity to scale the programs themselves, everything from recruitment of more volunteers and more coaches to how do the programs itself and education around how to be successful in the programs, how do you scale all of that if you think about the point where we might be in every school, someday, the infrastructure to support all that, just in terms of programmatic infrastructure and operations, is huge, and that's something which we want to get the basics in place and see some growth before we start to invest in all that stuff. So that's what the board spends a lot of our time on, are those activities, making sure we have the financial strength to grow, the relationships to grow, anyway, looking forward to hearing more about questions. We can talk more about it, but that's where we're headed.
All right, thanks, Jim, for that update. So our next question that we have is off-season training sessions. There's been a lot of discussion about off-season training, assistance, finding mentors, and additional support. How to provide support and training for young teams without mentors. I think, Kristen, you wanted to take this one.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Or do I have to get over here? I think I have to get over here. Okay. So the first subject that you have on here is the off-season support and the off-season training of sessions that go along with that. One of the things that we have found is very valuable is when we can get the right volunteer in position at an off-season event to shadow an experienced volunteer and learn the role. That helps them to prepare for the upcoming season. In order to do that, we have to have the correct person in the mentoring role, as well as the volunteer available at that event. So we work with our off-season partners to make that happen. Sometimes it's more successful than others, and it's most successful when we know earliest in the year. So those off seasons very often are scheduling who their key volunteers are going to be in March and April of the year prior to the off season. And the earlier we know that someone's interested in that role and interested in stepping into that, the sooner we can begin to work with that partner to put them in place. As far as finding mentors and providing additional support, I don't think there is such a thing as too many mentors for an FRC team in particular. For FTC teams, I know everyone in the room who runs an FTC team would look at me and say, we could use more mentors than we have as well. The one thing that you have to keep in mind is that they are very regionally specific in terms of coming to us and saying, hey, I want to mentor a team. So when we get someone who comes to us and says that they want to mentor a team, the process is that we work with them, we find out what type of team that they want to work with, and then we provide an introduction to the coaches of that team. At that point, it's up to you. So what you're going to need to do is treat that person like the very best apple on the tree for a couple of meetings. You've got to integrate them into the team. You've got to find a student that they connect with and put them one-on-one on that student and find their interest. And it's almost like you're bringing in a new student on the team. And then you want to continue to follow up with them. Does this work? What do you need differently? What can we do to help you succeed? We can help you in that process. We cannot do it for you. So I know that when it works incredibly well. I'm looking at Koo because he came in sort of on that route and has done a phenomenal job. If anyone has someone that they think would make a great mentor, but maybe not a great mentor for your team, it is entirely appropriate to steer them to us and say, they're not really going to be a great fit for my team, but they would be perfect for Torch or perfect for Sparky or whoever you think. Or you can just ask us to help them. But that is the route that works. We have an active database of mentors that come to us and are looking for teams. The majority of them are in the greater DC area because that is where the greatest number of industry professionals is. That said, there are a lot of really good mentors out there in this room and in the world that haven't found us yet, who are not engineers and not necessarily traditional industry professionals. So just taking time to talk to people that you come in contact with will go a long ways towards that. Again, if there's anything that I can do to support you in it, I am here. I will help. If you need me to help you have a conversation, call me, email me, throw an paper airplane at me. I will come and help. So supporting training for young teams without mentors. Is there anybody here who's figured out how to do a really good job at that? That is the only answer I have, is that it's up to those of you in the FIRST community to connect with those people and help them. I don't have an answer. If anybody has great answers for that, I am happy to hear them. If they're even halfway decent, I will try to implement them because it is a constant struggle. And team support update. So our biggest piece in team support right now over the summer has been to probably send you emails that none of you even got because you were out of school for the year. As the season goes on, for both FTC and FRC, you will receive regular updates from me on what is coming up in the program, what is going on, when fees are due, what to expect. If you need something specific, again, my email was on the screen. It's not now. You can email anyone on our board, and they can tell us how to get in touch with me. Other than that, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Most of you have more than 2 emails from me and can find your way back. But I am here to support in any way that you need. We also have Angie Fontanilla, who is our senior mentor in Northern Virginia. We have a brand new senior mentor coming on in Fredericksburg. And we have several other staff persons on board that are there to help. So we've got Ron Theron, you've got myself, you've got Sarah always. Leanne answers her phone night and day, and her emails almost as frequently. Okay, she really doesn't answer her phone in the middle of the night. Don't call her then. But we are all here to help. For most of you in this room, I am probably your primary point of contact for team-related business. So moving on, I am handing this back to you.
Thanks, Kristen, for that update. And we're going to move on to talk a little bit about volunteers. So I think, Sarah, you wanted to handle this. How are we improving volunteer selection and recruitment? Specifically, Sarah, can you address the loss of experienced people that we've had and how we can do a better job of keeping them? How are we going to handle the politics and the personality clashes that sometimes come up at these events? So,
yeah, personality conflicts, piece of cake, right? I'm going to start with recruitment and selection. So recruitment's important to me. So casting a wide net, anybody who's, I don't know, maybe been in line with me at Kroger probably has heard about FIRST. So, that enthusiasm from our volunteers is contagious. I know that every one of y'all have talked to somebody in the grocery store about FIRST also. So you have. I can see y'all all nodding. So our volunteers are my best recruiters for other volunteers. Because of the enthusiasm, because of what they bring to the table, they are my best. We use Volunteer Match. We've just recently implemented a form. You have it in your email if you haven't seen it yet. We would like to cast a wider net as far as key roles go. In other words, if you're interested in a key role, if there's a role you would like to try, we have 14, 15, 1,600 volunteers. I can't read everyone's mind as to what you're interested in. So I'm asking people to let us know. Let us know if there's a role you would like to tell us about so that we can try and get you training, get you exposure. With that being said, to my longtime key volunteers, I love you too, but I also need to make room for other volunteers. So and you will hear me say it time and time again, I'm challenging people to try different roles. We know that satisfaction in volunteers comes from trying different things. I know y'all don't all agree with me, but it really does. And we also know we tried something new this year. We did send out a volunteer survey after each competition. We did get 200 responses back. What I found fascinating about that is anybody who knows a lot about surveys knows that people are more likely to fill out a survey if they're what, happy or unhappy? You got it. So what do you think our average score on that 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend FIRST to a person? 7? Anybody else? 9.3. Okay? So we know people want to complain, but that tells me that we're doing some things right. Okay? I'm not saying we're doing everything right. And when I say I want to hear from our volunteers, I really do want to hear from you guys. I want to know what we're doing right, what we can work on, and how we can make it better. So you have my phone number. Reach out. As far as volunteer selection goes, I wish there was a formula. I wish I could say, first we look at how long you've been here, then we look at how experienced we are, then we look at your, the mean average of such a, it's not a formula that is, we work in a committee format, and the committees often know. My local contacts at the sites know which volunteers work well together, which make a good team, and we try to take that into account. The other thing is we're getting better data from FIRST headquarters. I'm getting data that can help us make better decisions, one of which I'm very excited about, is when somebody applied in the system. It used to be I had a list of 20 volunteers. I didn't know who applied first. So now being able to tell when somebody came into the system, when they applied, is just another piece of data to help us make decisions and to help people get people in the right roles. But it is a committee aspect. The site liaison is part of it, the local volunteer staff, everybody is part of that decision to select volunteers. Let's see. Loss of experienced volunteers. Experienced volunteers, every organization loses experienced volunteers from time to time. People's kids grow up, people's kids go to college and get a job successful, and they move on to other volunteering opportunities, and we want that to happen. We don't want people to continue to volunteer because they feel like they have to volunteer for FIRST because they always have. And so we want to provide that opportunity for other people to come in and to learn from experienced volunteers. So we need experienced volunteers. We need new volunteers. We need a nice mix. There's no doubt about it. In some of our key roles, though, I'm going to be real honest, recruiting for some of our key roles has been a little bit of a challenge. Social media hasn't been my friend with recruiting some of these people. When we don't display gracious professionalism when talking about somebody who's volunteering at an event, and all of y'all see it, and I say, hey, don't you want to do this role? They're So again, I'm asking as a community for us to continue to support these volunteers because all of our volunteers get paid the same, believe it or not, to do this job. And it's not easy. Some of these roles that people take on aren't easy. I know that people are doing it for the right reason, and it's for the program, it's for the kids. And that's one of the things that, gets me up and gets me in front of that computer every morning to continue to get these volunteers on board, because we want to train them and we want to see people grow as far as that. Personality conflicts. So we're continuing to work on getting training, right? So training to the people that are at a competition on how to manage conflict, how to put that type of training out there so that people know how to. Am I going to be able to tell you that you're going to put 100 people volunteering together and everybody's going to get along happily? I mean, I can say it. Y'all aren't going to believe me. Personality conflicts happen. I think one of the things we can do best is provide open and honest feedback at the time and to work together and to remember the positive intent. Going back to what Leanne said, remember why we're here and that we're all doing it for the same reason and that chances are that volunteer's there for the same reason you are, okay? So assume that they want the best outcome for the kids. They want the best outcome for the students. And I think if we remember that, that goes a long way to help that. Does that help answer, hopefully, that question? Did I address everything? I think I did. Thanks, guys.
Okay. So again, if you're listening back online, I think Gabe, you last time we checked, we had about 10 or 11 people. Is that still about that number? Up to 13 people, who are online right now watching. I'm not sure how it all works, but we are going to try to answer questions. And so if you're online and do have some follow-up questions, I'll work with Gabe back there and see if we can get those answered if we have time. Right? Okay. So you upload your questions to the chat, and we'll see if we have time to get to those. I know we also want to get some questions here. Our last question that we're going to, our pre-selected question has no bearing on me, but has a bearing on most of you in this room, and that is, can we get an update on VHSL?
Hi. Okay. So remember a little while ago, Leanne said assume positive intent. Is everybody really clear on that? What that means? Okay. The other thing that I'm going to ask you to do, and this is something that they pushed on us hard at community conference this year, and at the time it drove me crazy. But right now, I understand what they mean, and that is to dare greatly. I need you to trust me on this one for just a few minutes while we go through this, and then I will be happy to answer questions. Okay? So also, I made this slide on my phone at my meeting that I was coming from before, so if there are spelling errors, forgive me ahead of time. So we did not approach VHSL and say, we really, really, really want to come under your umbrella and be a part of your organization. VHSL came to us along with all of the other robotics programs in the state and said, we are going to do robotics. You can either come on board with us and you can help us shape what that looks like, or you can take what we give you. So given the opportunity to shape what that looked like or take what they gave us and wish y'all the best, I joined their committee. There are a few other people from within the FIRST community on it, as well as representatives from VEX and Sea Perch, and one poor lonely guy from another organization. So what they did is they formed a committee of all of us and said, come up with a set of common criteria that we could judge every robotics program that exists by and rate them in order to participate in this. So it was not about necessarily giving the kids an additional robotics competition. It was not about making more work for the teachers. It was very specifically about not making more work for the teachers. I'm not just looking at you. So we worked on it a lot. It is still a work in progress. I do have copies of the initial assessment rubric here, and I brought a bunch of them. I may not have a bajillion because there's a lot more people here than I thought were going to be here. But I do have them, and I will pass them around, and you may have them to keep. They say draft on the top. That is because the work is not done yet. The current goals center around having the program accessible to schools for the 2021 school year. They really were trying hard to get it rolled out for this school year, and we all pushed back a little bit and said it's not ready. So currently, they're aiming for 2021. Now we're going to see if I can change slides for myself. Yes. Okay, so this is the scoring rubric. It's not very clear on there. You can totally see that. I can probably... Well, did I mention I did it from my phone? There are paper copies up here for anybody to see that. Again, this says draft on it, so many of these could change. Oh, there's a sort of. Sort of. Okay, so let's see. He did that. And then Okay, that's probably about the best I'm going to get it, folks. All right, so Leanna's going to come around the room and pass those out. I can provide this by email for anybody who wants it. Again, you should have my email. If you don't, I also have cards here. Feel free to ask. Okay, so these are the common questions that I get about VHSL. So I'm going to answer these now, and then when we get to the question and answer section, you can think of a whole new set. So the first one is, will participating put restrictions on the hours that my team can work? Will it be like football? My team can't practice on Sundays. The answer is no. VHSL is going to recognize robotics as a club, not as a sport. That means that you probably won't get football coach stipends and a giant stadium named after you. It also means that you can practice on Sunday if you would like to. So the next question I get quite frequently is participation mandatory? Again, the answer is no. Your school does not have to participate in this if they choose not to. There are instances when schools are not eligible to participate in it as well. So private schools cannot participate, with one exception. Boarding schools cannot participate. Schools that have students from multiple different schools, if you have one school in the county that does FRC and have 11 high schools that feed into it, or 2 high schools that feed into it, they cannot participate. Schools that accept homeschoolers on their teams cannot participate. So those are all things to keep in mind when determining if you want to join the VHSL bandwagon or not. Again, it is not mandatory. The next question is, why is First Chesapeake doing this? This question was also very often asked with the words "to us" after it. Just to be clear, First Chesapeake, those of us sitting up here and the rest of us who are not here today, are not doing this to you. We were given a choice in forming what it looked like or sitting back and being passive and letting it happen, and we elected to participate and have a voice in hopes that we could make it the best that it could be for you. I am happy as I go through the process with VHSL to answer any questions that I can. There are some documents that they request be kept confidential until they're ready to release them. So if I tell you that I can't share something with you, it's not because Leanne said I can't share it with you or Jim said I can't share it with you. It's because VHSL is not ready for it to be published yet. What about community teams, homeschool students, and multi-school teams? I answered that one. Will it be an additional competition? Right now, the answer is no. There is conversation about the possibility, if it is what, as a community, we want, for it to be an additional state championship in the future, but it will not roll out that way initially. So that's something that I will be looking to the FIRST community for feedback on, because we need to be careful with that. You want to make sure that participating in a state championship for robotics isn't viewed as far as your school could go. And you also want to make sure that the additional fees that will be incurred by that are in alignment with your team's funding. So will coaches get stipends in alignment with sports? So more than anything else I could wish ever in this room, wish the answer to that was yes. All of you deserve to have stipends that are in alignment with sports, except for maybe twice that, because you put in probably twice the hours. Unfortunately, this does not dictate that. It does give you a little additional leverage with your school, because you will be recognized in the same way that band or drama is, and those coaches are generally already getting bigger stipends than you are. So it is leverage. It is not the answer to that we would like it to be. And that same leverage should apply to using school facilities and to busing as well. So as your school brings up that conversation of VHSL with you, please feel free to have those other conversations with them about what it does for you. Why the portfolio? I know there's a couple of people in the room who are really, really, really happy about the portfolio. And I'm going to look at this side of the room while I have this conversation. So the portfolio was a way for VHSL to make an even playing field for all the programs. What they came to us and said that they wanted was one criteria that they could judge all of those different robotics programs against. So first we said, no way, that's impossible. And then we looked for commonalities, and it turned out there were about 23 of them that were pretty consistent between all of the programs. So we took those commonalities, and those became the evaluation criteria. I have pushed back really, really hard on the portfolio. I don't know if they will embrace it fully at this point. There was another partner from another organization that also did not love the idea of a portfolio. They're pushing really hard for a competition. So I'm open to suggestions from the FIRST community, particularly the FIRST community in Virginia, because this affects only Virginia at this time. Well, if somebody in Maryland or DC has a great idea, I still want it. But alternatives to a portfolio. If there's something else that you can come to me with and say, hey, this would be a great way to evaluate that, you're teachers. That's what you do for a living. So I'm happy to accept your help. The other question is, who will be serving as evaluators? All of you want to know who's going to be judging you, who's going to be judging your teams, who's going to be judging your kids. And it will be a combination of people who are familiar with your particular robotics program that you are participating with, whether it's FTC or FRC, and VHSL board members. So those will be combined committees doing those evaluations. It will not be somebody who's never seen FIRST before looking at your FRC team and going, well, they didn't win any awards. How could they be a gold standard team? And the last is, where does the evaluation criteria come from? And that evaluation criteria was pulled from the data based on the commonalities that we found between all of the programs. End of slideshow. You don't have to listen to me talk anymore. Thank you all for your patience in letting me get through that. And again, I appreciate that you assume positive intent in working with us on this.
Okay, so that ends kind of the structured format of the program. So at this point, we're going to open the floor up to you to see, to answer questions. I think we're going to bring anything new to the table. Is that correct, Leanne? Or any follow-ups to things that have been discussed at this point. Again, for the people streaming, I'll pass the mic around. Obviously, it doesn't do anything in this room, but and then just hand it back to me, and I'll get it to the appropriate person who wants to respond to that. Matt?
At the beginning, you discussed the ecosystem issue with FIRST. You said you get 20% back from FIRST from what the teams give. That means they keep 80%. I would like to know what you think of that split. Is that split equitable? What do you think an equitable split should be? And what are you going to do to make sure we get more money back for our teams?
That is a great question. Honestly, that's like I said in my talk about what the board is focused on. That's one of the big focus areas for the entire board. We regularly have like 3/4 of the board on these regular ecosystem calls. There was a number of us that actually went up to New Hampshire and spent time up there, and so it's a big focus area. I don't think that the current sharing of revenue is equitable. Actually, I think it's my personal perspective, and I've shared this very openly with FIRST headquarters, is that all of the very low risk form of revenue, which are basically event fees, vast majority of that goes to headquarters, and the revenue that we are left to, that we need to deliver, is much higher risk associated with fundraising and the vagaries of sponsorship and things. So we're talking about a couple of different models of how we make it more equitable. We're looking at aligning it with, where the majority of expense and effort is expended for activities. We're looking at something that's just, some more sort of basic 50-50 kind of models. We're looking at something that makes the numbers that we need to hit for significant growth just something which the base costs are covered by those fees, and then anything above just the operating activities of the events is something that we're accountable for raising ourselves. So there's a couple of different options that are in play, and frankly, this is something that is not going to be resolved within the next few months. This current fiscal cycle is not when it's probably going to be another 12 months before we get to a place. But I have been very positive. I have a positive perspective of everybody's intentions in this, which is to really enable sustainable growth for the programs. There's nobody who's not in it for that, and it's just a matter of sort of working through this. And the ecosystem project is not just between us and FIRST headquarters. This is the entire FIRST program around the world. So there's a lot of different stakeholders involved in this. But I'm hopeful that we'll get to a good spot. Certainly, everybody's intentions are very good on all sides.
Just a question about the volunteer that you had all those surveys. Can you explain how, like the host schools will be able to access, or can they access that information so that we can look at improving how the events occur?
So we're trying to provide some transparency. There's a couple of surveys. There's a team survey. This year there was a key volunteer survey. So people who were considered key volunteers, and I know key volunteers is a touchy name because all of my volunteers are important. All of you guys are important, so key. But anyway, there were certain people that were asked for feedback on other key volunteers. We have that feedback. We have team feedback. And then we did our own volunteer feedback. We are in the process of figuring out the best way to disseminate that information so that the people who need the information have it while scrubbing the data to make sure that we're maintaining confidentiality that is promised to anybody who takes a survey so that we can make it valuable. So we're in the process of figuring the best way to get that information to the committees. So we want to provide it. We're working on that. Does that help? I know, I kind of punted that, but yes.
So way back in the beginning, when you're talking about what the new structure might be, one of the options was that you might all eventually be under a single organization for the different levels of FIRST. If that happens during a funding year, can you say definitively all the funding moves to the right organization? How's that? Is there a plan for that, or have you thought about that yet?
Leanne, do you want this one?
That's a really good question. I wish I had a really good answer for you. We are still in the very beginnings of this discussion, and so we know that the programs. FIRST isn't going to let any of the programs fail. They're just not. They're not. But we don't know how any of this is going to work, and again, we don't know for sure that option number 2 is going to happen, or if it's going to be option number 1. So we are supposed to be in conversations with headquarters over the next few months, and we will have more clarity hopefully by January. So I'm sorry I don't have a better answer.
I've got one from online. This is from our friends down in Tidewater region, Blackwater Robotics. They want an update on is there an update on any potential for inter-district play for district points? Okay.
So I like to sit on a lot of committees. Actually, I don't know if I like to sit on a lot of committees or not, but I get asked to sit on a lot of committees, and that is one that I'm on at headquarters. One of the things that came about with district is that teams lost the ability to go play outside of their own geographical area or their own district to get points. So we are working with headquarters. It will not be competition year 2020 because they're working hard on the ecosystem project, and that is taking precedence over everything right now. As the ecosystem project rolls out, there is a plan in place to look strongly at it. And I think in the long term, it will be something that you will see. Probably in all of your FRC careers, it will be something that you will see. It's not going to be this year. So for this year, teams coming to your district playing won't be earning points. They won't be taking points away from your district. If they win an award, it's a trophy that they take home, and those points come out of the pool, and that's it. If you go to another district and you play there, same thing. If you win an award, it's a trophy. It's a lovely piece of plastic that you can sit on your trophy shelf and show your sponsors and let your team be proud of. There will not be points attached to it. Any follow-up questions for that?
So I have a quick question. For as my role also as a mentor, take that, switch hats. Last year we lost, I think, one of our slots. And I think we were down a couple slots from the first year in our district for being in a district to go to Worlds. We're growing, but I don't think we're growing as fast as other districts, and that's why we're losing. What's our short-term potential for growth so that we can keep or maintain or even grow the number of slots that we have for the World Championships?
So in order to keep or maintain or grow the number of slots for FIRST Championship that we hold, we have to grow at the same rate or faster than every other district. That is the short answer for that. The long answer is that if we grew by more than, I believe the number is 6 teams, Leanne, we would have to add an event. And that falls back to the revenue share. So at this time, we will grow very cautiously and very gradually to make sure that we are sustainable. Once that piece is more solidified, we will then be able to grow at the rate that we need to protect the slots.
Let me just follow up with the explanation of the revenue share. So for every team, we get every FRC team, we get $1,000 back. A district event costs around $22,000. So if we have 6 teams and we need to add another district or another district event to accommodate those 6 additional teams, we're then $16,000 in the hole, if I'm doing the math correctly. So that is why we are saying we are trying to be very cautious right now. We just have to be very mindful of what we can afford. I think Maren has a question back there.
So I think I'm going to kind of piggyback off of some of that. Being in a region, you kind of pointed us out. We're from Fredericksburg. We drove an hour to get here. This was the closest we could get to come to one of these. We constantly see Richmond growing. We see Northern Virginia growing. What's the plan to grow areas like ours so we don't continuously have to drive this full hour to get to places like this to come to an event like this?
Hi, Maren. So growth in an area is really probably threefold. The first piece of that is having the staff support in the area to go out and talk to businesses, talk to schools, talk to individual teachers to develop a base for a team there. And so we've put that in place now. I'm not going to tell you who he is today because he'll get introduced next week by email. But we did get an approval from FIRST headquarters this afternoon, right before I left, to come over here for a new senior mentor, and he will be in the Fredericksburg, Stafford area. We put somebody in that area very strategically to look at growing across that band of Virginia. That location gives him access, well, Virginia and Maryland, it gives him access to both sides of the river, as well as to some areas as far-reaching as Orange. So that is one piece of it, is putting the staff there. The next piece of it comes from you, and that is that our teams are our best advocates for starting new teams. The outreach that you do within the schools when you go and you talk to them and you get them to start an FLL team. So that conversation has to keep going. It has to go to the parents so that they're putting the pressure on their schools to do FTC when those kids get to middle school and high school, and to do FRC as they move up into high school. That is the only way we are ever going to meet the goals of having a team in every school in the state, is with help from all of you. So that answer is really the same whether you're in Fredericksburg or you're in Chesterfield County or you're in Hanover or you are in City of Richmond or Powhatan or any of the other areas that y'all are from. Didn't mean to forget Henrico. Sorry, guys. And as the FTC and FRC teams, you're the high school level teams. You are the top of that food chain. So some responsibility is going to fall on you to act as mentors for those new teams. That's falling back to that, how do we support new teams that don't have mentors? You're it, folks. I'm sorry. But that's going to fall on you. We will do everything we can to support you. We will work to put grants in place that help fund that. But at the end of the day, we are going to be looking to you to help grow teams. And let's see, I told you it was threefold, right? The third piece of that is the advocacy work that teams like Blue Cheese do to make robotics incentivized for the schools. It makes it much, much, much easier to start a new team at a school when there's a bill in place that says that there's $5,000 in funding for them. That's just a given. So that work, that piece of it, again, we depend heavily on the teams to help with, because we are 2 full-time staff people, a board of directors, and a few part-time people, and we can only be so many places at a time. Leanne, do you have anything you want to add to that? I didn't mean to call you out on that.
So I think one of your questions is also, why aren't there events closer to you? Correct? Was that one of your questions? And I think that also goes back to that criteria. And so if we're talking about building these teams, building this participation in the area, then you're starting to check those boxes. So we can then justify having the competitions in those areas. I think Fredericksburg is very important, not just because I graduated from Mary Washington, but also because it is really the halfway point between Richmond and DC. And so it is an area that we want to see grow, and we hope we can work together on that.
Maren and Patrick, y'all did an off-season there a few years ago for FTC. That was really pretty successful, and as a short-term solution, that would be something that you could look at revisiting again for the upcoming year, if you wanted to. Don't have to, no obligation, but if you do want to, then I will put a field in a truck and come up there.
So I have a couple other online questions. We'll tackle this one first. So this one goes back to your deflation of the Patriot Center with the announcement of of Newport News. This person wants to know, will there be any changes to the search process for an announcement of the 2020 2021 district championship in order to avoid the confusion that occurred after the announcement of the 2020 site. I'm assuming, and I'm not trying to read into this, but I'm assuming maybe they're asking here, more transparency, of that process.
Sure, and that is one of the things that the team advisory committee they've offered recommendations for sites for this year. We pick our sites about 18 months out, and we do that because we want to make sure we get the date because those dates go fast, and two, we want to be able to negotiate with a couple of different sites so we can get the best deal. We are in the process now of starting to look at sites. We're looking at sites that have been recommended by the committee. One thing that I did not realize, but I'm kind of glad to know, is that the committee said that they felt that even having the championship in the same location for 2 years in a row is okay. I was always under the impression that we needed to move them around every year, but they were saying there is some comfort in coming back the second year and knowing, where the best pizza place is or where the best hotel is, or most affordable hotel. So we are working. We are getting input on that. We're working right now to try and find a site for 21, possibly 22. Although First headquarters has to get the date to us for 22. So that we are trying to be more transparent. Of course, we can't tell you until after the championship because that's just the way it is. But we are taking your comments into consideration.
Given that the district championship model has increased in size, we're going to have so many more teams. My estimation of 3 locations we've used so far probably won't fit. So is that part of the criteria in selecting a new venue?
What I should have told you is right now, this deal that we have for the 80 teams is just for this year. So we will probably be collapsing back down to the 58 to 64 teams for the years for the future, unless we grow tremendously and First headquarters gives us a whole lot of money, and then we can look at other venues.
So that kind of segues into another question here I've seen online. Growth of tremendous growth, right? So the question is, with the growing in the number of districts in the area and the lack of a geographically close regional for West Virginia, has there been a discussion of incorporating West Virginia into the district? Or I'll even add into that, has there been discussion in maybe merging other districts into that that would help our region grow?
Oh, wow. Do I even want to think about that? The simple answer is no. There has not been a discussion with me about that. I think at this point they're still focusing on the ecosystem and how to handle that. They are not talking about bringing in additional partners from other regions at this point. We will have more information in January.
So I know dollars is a very big influencer from a sponsorship standpoint. Is there any strategy as far as asking sponsors to maybe do more than just fund, but also fund through mentorships and advocate for providing mentors and making that part of like their MOU as far as the partnership that you have with them? Because I know we kind of do that.
Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to from the workforce development? Okay. Right. Okay. So yes, when we talk to sponsors, we do talk about more than just money. We do talk about employee engagement, and it's funny because a lot of times that's all they want to talk about. They are happy to provide volunteers, and less happy to provide money sometimes. So we do include that in the conversation. As Sarah said, Newport News Shipbuilding is an excellent example of that. Chris Brown at Newport News Shipbuilding has worked very hard to try and place mentors from the shipyard in all of the teams within a 50-mile radius of the shipyard. We do have that discussion. One of the challenges is, and I'm sure you all know this, is, okay, I got a mentor, now what do I do with them? And we certainly don't want anybody to feel like they are wasting their time when they're volunteering. And so we still haven't found, the solution, this magic solution of how we can easily slide these mentors into these spots. But it is definitely part of the conversation with the majority of the sponsors.
Yeah. We take volunteers and we try. We get people that say, I want to mentor, and I say, come volunteer. But to see, because they do get exposure to the team and the kids, and to try and find the right mix. So some of it is exposure and trying to find the right mix. When we bring people in to volunteer, every now and then there's one volunteer that really is, gets the spark, and they're an engineer, or they have the right mix to come in and to help, and they have the right skill set. And we do sometimes find people that come in and volunteer and then flip to become a mentor. Obviously vice versa. So we keep that in mind, and like Leanne said, we don't necessarily have the right mix yet, but we're working on it. And you guys as mentors know this.
So not very often, but frequently enough that it bears mentioning, we will have a volunteer at an event that will come to us at the event, and they'll say, I really would love to volunteer with the team. And they'll tell me they want to volunteer with this team. They've already researched your team online. They know where you live. They might have your children's names, but probably not. And they'll ask for an introduction. And at that point, one of us will come over to your pits with a total stranger and say, hi, coach, do you have a minute? We want to talk to you. And that is awkward for us as well as for you. If you could just take 2 seconds and look up and say, hi, it's great to meet you. Here's my card. I'd love to talk to you down the line. Or, great, it's great to meet you. Let Kristen email an introduction. Then we can pursue it from there. We have to have your permission to send that email introduction. So we can't just send them your way blindly or send you their way blindly. We have to go through those steps. So while I know it is awkward, it is not always convenient, I do try to catch you when your robot is not on fire. And just like I said, if you can just take a minute when we bring somebody to your pits and acknowledge that may be what it is, that will help. It is not a solution to the problem, but it may help.
Just to comment on the corporate volunteers as mentors, possibly. A lot of us that work in the corporate world already spend 40, 50 hours a week at work and don't really want to give you another 3 hours a day for 6 weeks. So the Stop Build Day, end of Stop Build Day thing that's happening this year is actually a pretty big deal, because I might be able to say, I can give you 2 days a week, but I can't give you 5. And if I can't give you 5, I'm not useful for a 6-week build period. So it's a different way to look at your corporate volunteers, your corporate mentors, and say, hey, can you give me 2 days a week? Can you give me Saturday and Wednesday, for example, if you guys can work on Saturday? And that would be something that would be a lot easier for me to do, even though I'm not looking for a team right now.
Just one housekeeping agenda. Gabe wanted me to let everybody know that this is recorded and will be archived and uploaded to YouTube for posterity. I'm looking forward to checking Facebook to see how I did. I may never do this again. But anyway, so there is one other question here. It goes back to VHSL. I think that some of the things might have been addressed, but looking for some clarification. And so this person was asking, with the VHSL prospect, does this mean that they're going to sponsor FIRST, VEX, and Sea-Perch teams, or are they going to be having their own competition league and their own challenges? And I think that this person also then said, as a suggestion, because I think we were talking about, giving ideas, to, make things like Texas State Championship, Minnesota State Championship, where it's more of an off-season event rather than an in-season situation. So I think this goes, Chris.
Okay, so that was a really long question, so I'm going to clarify. The question was, would we consider making it like Texas or Michigan, where it is an off-season event? That is one of the things that is being discussed. It will not roll out that way initially. The next piece of it, can you help me out, Greg? Okay, gotcha. Okay, so VHSL is not a sponsor. They will not be funding teams. They will not be starting teams. They will not be finding mentors or any of those things. They will be I don't like to use the word governing body because they're not really governing. What they are doing is providing a format for VHSL to recognize robotics within the state. So that is their goal, is to provide a format where VHSL can recognize robotics in the same way that they currently recognize drama and band and some sports. Although we will not be a sports model. Question?
So maybe, sorry. So maybe I'm not really into VHSL, but I have heard of it coming and everything. So can you explain if there's any benefits to joining it, or if there's any detriments to joining it, or why?
So I can't speak to whether it would be a benefit or a detriment for your team. You will each have to make that decision for yourselves. The long-range hope for it is that as an organization, FIRST Chesapeake will see benefit in that we will have an increased leverage to get venues without cost. So right now there's a lot of disparity in our event host sites in what the districts view as fair and equitable. So there's some hope for standardization of that. And there is hope that it will put you on equal footing with the other programs that participate as clubs. So right now, very often, drama has a trailer that the school owns and pays for and insures, and they get a bus whenever they need it that the school provides. And robotics has to rent the bus driver from the district if they can get one at all. So the hope is to create more equal footing for you in those areas. Any follow-up question?
All right, so do we have anything else? Any other concerns, questions that we're going to address? We have about 10 minutes left, but if we're all good, we can always end this thing about 10 minutes early. Okay. So a couple things. There is the archived website. Would it be possible to shoot out an email with the link to that, where that will end up being at some point? Also, for those here and also those in attendance online, again, this is our first of 5 town hall meetings, right? And we hope that people got what they needed out of this. one of the things that I want to strongly support is that we're here at Collegiate today because of an email that I sent to Leanne right after the district championship was announced. She thought I was complaining about the site of the district championship, which I wasn't, but she started, well, what do you want to know about the district championship selection? I said, well, you could tell me, but that's not why I was emailing you. But we did talk about town halls, and we talked, then she said, well, yeah, we've been getting a lot of response about getting answers to questions in face-to-face. So the point that I'm trying to make is that I know firsthand that there's an open line of communication with the district, with the staff of the district. And, if we have questions, I know firsthand that they're going to do their best to give you answers when they can. And I don't always think that, they can give you every answer because some things we're not privy to at that point. All right? And things that they're not privy to as well. So I just wanted to put my own piece on that. That's why we're here today, because of the conversations that started. I want to thank you guys for coming to Collegiate tonight. We're happy to share our beautiful campus with you, and happy to host this evening. When you leave here, just be warned, you'll hit about 32 speed bumps on the way out. Just take it slow. Every year they add 4 or 5 more speed bumps to the same road. So just some speed tables, some speed bumps. Maybe you did 3 laps before you found this place and went over those speed bumps. Do you have any closing comments, Leanne, that you want to add? Oh, wait, one more, Matt? Okay.
In your presentation, you discussed how you will no longer be communicating in closed groups. I know there's people online right now that are wondering, why in God's name aren't you? If you could just, give a little more detail as to why you will not discuss things, say, on a closed Facebook group, for example.
Thank you for asking that question. And I had actually had it in my opening remarks, and then I thought, okay, I've laid a whole lot on y'all right now, and so I'm not going to give you any more. But the decision to not respond with policy on closed groups is, one, it's a closed group. So not everybody is getting that information. If we need to send information out, we are going to make sure everybody gets it, okay? Or do our best to make sure everybody gets it. I see some people rolling your eyes, and I'm sorry about constant contact. It's the best system we've got. But that's how we're going to do it. The second reason, and this is the more important reason to me, is that many times social media dehumanizes people. People, think about it. I mean, the comments that you see on social media, you read it and you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that person just said that. Or would you say that to someone's face? And it's not productive. It's not productive, and it's not healthy. And so we have decided that we need to take a stand. We are going to use the forms of communication that reach out to everyone. And we are not going to be a part of some of these conversations that have been in these forums in the past. So.
Follow up on that. If there is some things, questions being asked in that realm, obviously then you won't address them. So would you suggest that if people are seeing questions that are relevant to our district, to bring those up to you, and to ask them so they can be communicated to the district?
Thank you. Yes. So to go back, if you have a question that you need addressed, contact us. If you have a question that you want discussed amongst folks, then contact the team advisory committee. They're very good about speaking their minds and bringing issues to us. And Ann Shade, who is the chair for that committee, has been very good about sending that information back out to answer those questions. So we have these lines of communication in place. So let's use them so we can communicate effectively. Again, we all want what's best for the organization and best for the kids, and I feel that this is the way we need to go about it.
Leanne, is there a way for the team the team advisory committee to reach out to the teams, or the teams to contact the team advisory committee directly, aside from the names that were posted here today? Is it somewhere else that they can find? Okay. So the way that we do the pit numbering is that the rookies should be closest to the field. So all of you should be having to walk past them to get to the field and play. They should always be up there in the front row. That lets our FTAs keep an eye on them, as well as our FTAAs and our CSAs. We put them where you can see them easily. And also, again, where y'all have to walk back past them, because you are our best resource for who can help the rookies. I'll get to that question in a minute. The other reasoning behind not randomizing the pits is that we bring in judges. Very often they are first familiar but not first intimate. So they have seen first before. They've had some judges training, but they don't really understand the intricacies of how a competition works. And they have approximately 3 minutes to find a team and then 5 minutes to interview them. And when they spend 7 minutes of that trying to find them on a pit map because they got confused, that doesn't benefit the team. So I guess if it was important to all of the teams, we could survey the teams and take their opinion into consideration. I can't promise that it would make a difference, because we do have to balance both sides of that. So I will very happily, when I send out the team information this year, reiterate the size of the pits and that teams are not to expand outside of their pit area with human bodies or equipment or trusses. Will that do it?
So this will be the last question of the night. We said we were going to cut this off at exactly 8, and we've got about a minute to go here. So
this is just a quick suggestion on maybe a possible fix for that. Instead of ordering the teams by team number, perhaps we alphabetize them, so that would make it easier for the judges to find the teams, and you still have the mix within.
So everybody in here knows what their team nickname is, right? So Sparky, Scrappy, Scrappy's not here, but each of you have a team nickname. That's not how they print out in my system from FIRST, in our system from FIRST. They print out by your sponsor name first. So that would mean that Sparky would be under F for FlexSL. And you would be, I think, Farmer Machine. Well, no, I thought one of y'all was Farmer Machine. Okay. DOD STEM. Okay, nope. All right. DOD STEM. So, yeah, there'd be a lot of Ds. And if FIRST published it in a way that those team nicknames were prevalent on the sheet that I am given to work with, it would be an easy solution, and I would entirely agree with you. because it goes by sponsor name, that would be a little more challenging. It would make it easy for the sponsors to find their teams, though.
Well, thank you all for attending. Last Wednesday, we had 6 people who had RSVP'd to show up. So yeah, there was a mad rush to make sure this was actually viable. Because it's their time as well as our time. And between online and here, I mean, we're close to 40 people being around. So I think this was a good night. I appreciate you all coming. And thank you. All right, have a great night.